what are some of the maybe basic tuning tips for a shock package, and maybe a good starting point for our shock settings when a guy's just showing up at the track, and where does he start? What should he do?
Good question. In each AFCO shock box, you'll receive a tuning guide. It's broken down by door car or dragster. It's broken down by ET. So it gets us into a segment or a section of tuning, and it gives us a starting point to work with. Again, we want to go full stiff and then count the clicks counterclockwise for a starting spot. And at that point, it's time to go to the track. So we go out, maybe make a couple of runs to baseline the car that day. Given the amount of traction, early in the year, it might be a little different than after the tracks get worked in a little bit. Locally, our tracks would be a little bit green for the first 2 or 3 weeks, and then kind of come in a little bit, and you could start to get a little more comfortable that everything was going to kind of settle in. But make a couple of runs, evaluate what's taking place, what you'd like to see. If you have an expectation for 60 foot or maybe the car's a little bit slow to 330, break down your transit time between the 60 and the 330, figure out maybe where we need to help the car. And then from there, I recommend 3 clicks of change to see something so that it picks up on the time slip. So make a change, go out and make a pass, come back, evaluate the difference between the previous setup and this setup, and then from there determine where we go next. But that's generally kind of the thought process and the number of clicks to give that shock to see a change.
So let's just go through a couple scenarios. Let's say I'm that guy. I just go up to the line. I set the shocks where I thought I should start at based on the recommendations on the sheet, and I hit the button and boom, I just blow the tires off immediately. I mean, the car just didn't even move an inch. It just spun instantly. What would be a first step, or what adjustment would I want to try and make after that scenario?
There's potentially several adjustments to be made with when that happens. The front of the car's got to work, or the back of the car won't work. So, if we start at the front, do we have adjustable shocks or struts up front? If we do, were we a little aggressive on extension? Were we trying to limit the amount of up travel too much hydraulically? So we might have to loosen up the valving on the front to get the car to weight transfer back a little bit more. So that might be the first place to start, is to loosen up the front end. Maybe we were a little aggressive. Maybe we thought the track would be better, and it turns out that it's not. So after we address the front, then we would go to the back. And at that point, we need to determine or need to understand what the suspension is set up to actually do. What's the first movement of the rear suspension going to do? A lot of cars, their first movement is to separate, which means the axle housing goes down, the chassis, the body, everything goes up. So the first movement of the shock is to extend. And if that's the case, and the car knocked the tires off as you're describing, my thought would be that our extension rate is too stiff on the shock. So we would go to the adjuster on the end of the shaft and open that up or soften that up 3 clicks counterclockwise. And that would allow for the shock to be a little bit softer, so that when we launch, the shock extends, we plant the tire, and we get better traction in that situation. If the car is set up to squat, which that is to say the body goes down first, then it's the opposite adjustment for the shock. The compression side of the shock might have been too stiff, and we might need to soften that up. So, if the car is set up to squat and it didn't get to the tire quickly enough because the shock was too firm, you want to soften up compression, let that car get down faster, and plant the tire and initiate launch.
Excellent. Well, I think that's going to probably help quite a few racers out. And any closing comments you'd like to make, Mr. Saffel?
The one thing that comes to mind that I think is important that everybody might need to know, might not know, is that every one of these adjustable shocks is dynoed after they're built. That ensures quality, that ensures accuracy. We get a matched program going there. The other thing I'd say is that we're here to help. We do a lot of tech calls. A lot of times on a Friday afternoon, we talk to people that are at the racetrack. We see data. They're sending us videos. That's part of the program here, is to support all of our teammates out there that are running our product, and we greatly appreciate that. So I would just say thanks to everybody that supported the AFCO Racing Products through the years, and we look forward to continuing to work with you guys.
Absolutely. I know that right now it's been a challenging time for most folks, and we're all looking forward to the opportunity where we can get back out to the racetrack and start doing the things that we love to do.
For more information, visit us at afcoracing.com.